Okay, recording has kicked in. So welcome everyone to the January 2021, and I made sure I got the year right, Microsoft 365 Modern Management Meetup. Now this month we're going to break a little bit with what we normally do, where we normally jump into a bit of news, etc., before we get into the session, because it's been, December's a fairly quiet period. There haven't been a huge number of announcements, but also we've got a special guest this week, or this month, Andrew McMurray, who I think a few of you have probably worked with over the years. Andrew and I did an education roadshow once together. That was kind of fun, to put it mildly. And Andrew is probably going, oh yeah, I forgot I worked in that team for a while. And Andrew's you're in the CXP team for Endpoint, so I'll let you do your proper intros, etc., when we switch through. But Andrew kindly volunteered to go through, the latest and greatest on the information protection side. And then at some point, Ben will reappear. Is Ben driving somewhere on a country road at the moment?
I think so.
That's my interpretation of based on the messages and photos we were getting.
So that was my interpretation too.
Okay. Now, if Ben doesn't make it or gets caught up in traffic, I think we're probably good to go through the universal print stuff anyway. I went through and just made sure that I got everything working just in case Ben did get caught up. But otherwise, Mako, if you want to sort of take control and go through everything, and it's not a huge group, so are you okay if we sort of unmute to ask questions, or do you want questions in the chat window so that you can exercise full control?
Nah, fuck that. Just talk to
me. I was kind of expecting that response, so thank you.
Yeah, no, just unmute and go for it as and when you need to. So thanks very much. All right, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Macca. I'm a program manager on the highfalutin titled M365 Security and Compliance Customer Experience Engineering team, which is a bit of a wanky term for dude who goes out and helps people deploy shit, which is basically what it is. And then we look for blockers, we push them back to the feature PMs and the developers to get fixed. And hopefully we make the thing a little bit better as we go along. So my area of focus at the moment is Microsoft Information Protection, the unified DLP story that we've been attempting to push. And at some point, it'll get to a stage where, it really is something you can stand up against Symantec and McAfee. And I also look after the insider risk management and communication compliance side of the fence at the moment as well. Do that for the Asian region. So, if you're dealing with very large customers that need some help and you want to pull us in from engineering, give us a yell. So today what I'm going to do is just really quickly take you through what we've been doing with Endpoint DLP. And if you were paying attention during the Ignite stuff that we did in, when was it now? September, was it? We're doing it again in March. You would have seen, it would have been in the November timeframe, I think. You would have seen, no, it was definitely September. You would have seen that Endpoint DLP had GA'd around the time we did Ignite, and it was fairly rudimentary, and indeed it still is. But if you saw it then, what I'm going to show you today, there'll probably be a couple of new things in there as we go along. We're going to concentrate on Endpoint DLP because that's really the final piece of the puzzle that we needed to start claiming that we had a full DLP suite. But it really is a version 1 at the moment. Endpoint DLP only works on Windows, doesn't work on any other platform, has to be on version 18 or 9 or later of Windows 10, and blocks a few things, but not a lot more. There's a lot more sort of stuff coming down the line. But I want to give you an idea of how it works when we look at the rest of the DLP suite. And Steve's just gone to get himself another beer, clearly. So what I want to do is just take you through some standard sort of marketing guff that we've got, just to give you an idea of the way in which we talk about this when we're presenting to customers and partners. And then I'll take you through a bit of a demonstration as to what the thing is capable of doing at the moment. Now, as we go along, don't be afraid to just unmute and yell out. I can't see the Teams window at the moment because I've got presenter view on. I promise you I won't be reading off presenter notes. It's just that for some reason I've got presenter view on. So essentially, when we talk about the DLP solution, we talk about the ability to protect the first-party cloud, the third-party cloud, and now the endpoint as well. And what differentiates us from the competition, we believe, are sort of 5 major bullet points here. The first thing that we really talk about when we get into the discussion a little bit further is the fact that DLP is a unified single portal solution in Microsoft 365, whereas a lot of the other DLP providers are built on acquisition over time and lots of different portals. We try to do it all in a single one. Now, for Microsoft to turn up for your customer and say, "Hey, guess what? We're doing this in a single portal. Aren't we amazing?" is generally speaking a bit of a ha-ha moment, because we're just as bad as everybody else. And our DLP story has been very fragmented over the course of time. So if you go back a couple of years, you would do DLP in Exchange Online, you would do DLP in SharePoint Online, you would do DLP in Cloud App Security, you would do DLP here, you would do DLP there. What we're attempting to do over the next, since the last year and over the course of this year, is to truly bring everything together in the compliance.microsoft.com portal and do it all from one place. Just like we always do, we spend a lot of time getting all that stuff across. So at the moment, when you're in a practical scenario of actually deploying this in your own environment or in a customer's environment, you will find that a certain percentage of this stuff gets done in a single console, and you'll still end up shelling out to other areas to do things like look at alerts or pull back audit data and stuff like that. And unfortunately, we haven't quite got there yet, but we will get there over the course of this year. So when we talk about the unified DLP, it's all of those areas I mentioned before. And coming very soon, we're going to have the ability to do on-premises file share DLP based on the AIP scanner, but you'll control that from the unified DLP portal. So there's a lot of stuff in here, but as I said, functionally, we're going to concentrate on what we can do on the endpoint today. So when we build a policy inside the DLP portal, essentially what we do is we create one policy and attach it to the workloads that we need to attach it to. So what you can see on the screen here is an example of the second part of the wizard, where we're choosing exactly what workloads we want to associate our DLP policy on. One of the great bits of value that we will push and push and push, or actually our field salespeople will push and push and push at customers, is the fact that you do one wizard pass, turn it on for everything, and fantastic, you're just there. In reality, if you attempt to do something like you see on the screen now, the predicates available to you as conditions in DLP absolutely blow themselves down to about 2 or 3. Because what happens is when you have more than one workload, we can only show you the conditional predicates that are available for all of those workloads. If I was to go and create myself a policy that just looked at Exchange email and chose to look at my list of condition predicates, I would see around about 20 or 30 of them. If I then went and added SharePoint to that same policy, those 30 predicates would go down to about 5. And if I was to put all of these workloads on, you would get about 3 predicates, because we can only show you the stuff that's common to everything. So whenever you hear someone from Microsoft showing up at your or your customer's premises and saying, do it this way, you want to say, no, you do not do it that way. You create yourself a policy for each workload in isolation, so you know you can get access to every predicate you need to get access to. And I'll just really quickly demonstrate that to you if you haven't seen it before. But when we look at the workloads that we can hit, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, common stuff that we've been able to do for ages. Teams chat and channel messages is also a DLP capability that's available to E5 customers. And it's pretty much a unique feature to us. You can kind of kludge it with Semantic and McAfee, but it's not pretty. And honestly, if you want to do DLP in Teams, you really have to do it across chat and channel messages, OneDrive and SharePoint, if you want to catch the chat, and of course the file sharing as well. Because the file sharing of stuff inside a team is going to come either from SharePoint or OneDrive. Unfortunately, when it comes to protecting chat and channel messages, you may or may not have seen this, is when you turn this on, it actually does it in a passive form. Because effectively what happens with chat and channel messages is they're hitting Exchange Online mailboxes. So when you send a credit card into a chat, for instance, we're waiting for the DLP engine to notice that inside SharePoint, inside Exchange Online, make a decision about it, and then block it. The reality is, let's say I've got myself a DLP policy that looks for credit card numbers in Teams chat and channel messages and blocks them. The reality is when you send that credit card message, it can take anywhere from 5 to 17 seconds before it blocks it. which is more than enough time for the person at the other end to copy paste out what they need, and off they go. We're going to be doing quite a lot of work over this year to change the engine to be an instantaneous mechanism, still without needing to put an agent on the machine. We'll actually build the agentry into the Teams app so that we're not necessarily having to deploy kernel mode agents or anything, et cetera, and that again is another one of our big benefits, the fact that we do everything without agents. But it does lead to issues such as passive DLP that we see right now in version 1 of Teams chat and channel messages. Devices is the thing we're going to talk about today. Cloud app security. This is a method for us to take into the compliance portal the ability to configure a DLP policy and push it to cloud app security. And at the moment, you get far fewer choices than you do in cloud app security. So I'll try and show you a little bit of that as I go along. In terms of the the benefits, the big benefit we get with our unified DLP is you don't need to deploy a single agent or a single piece of on-premises infrastructure anywhere. So if you've got people out there, and you will have, that have been living with Symantec and McAfee, et cetera, for years and years, they all whinge and moan and complain because the agent causes the machine to run like shit. Ours doesn't do that, because all of our agentry is either in the cloud itself as part of the service, or if the agentry is running on the local machine, such as Endpoint DLP, it's built into the MDATP software itself. It's built into the MDATP sensor. So it's part of the operating system. We're not throwing an extra agent down onto the machine running in kernel mode and causing everything to go to shit. The really cool thing about this is, from the perspective of the customer, all we need to do is onboard the machines either to MDATP or to Endpoint DLP, utilizing exactly the same method as you would onboard to MDATP, and then that activates the Endpoint DLP sensor on the Windows 10 machine, and it can start transmitting back to us audit information about what's going on that machine. The massive benefit you get from that, apart from the fact that you don't have to push anything out via anything, is that as soon as you onboard the machine to Endpoint DLP, irrespective of whether you've deployed an Endpoint DLP policy to that machine, it will start feeding analytics back to Activity Explorer. So it will say, hey, I can see that this user has uploaded a file with credit card data to it to the cloud. I will see that the user has printed this to the cloud. And the benefit of this is that we can analyze Activity Explorer to see what's going on in the end user's environment, and then make some policy decisions based on what we're seeing. There's no point in going and creating a policy to catch credit card numbers if credit card numbers aren't actually being utilized anywhere. But if you can see it in the data itself after onboarding these machines, then you can make some intelligent decisions as to what policies you've actually got to go and create. And then, of course, once you've figured out what policies you're going to create, you're going to go to a single wizard to go ahead and create them. Now, the benefit of the integration with MIP here is that the sensitive information types that we can detect in a DLP policy are the same information types that are available to MIP if you're using sensitivity labeling, for instance, and using automatic or recommended labeling. So out of the box at the moment, we've got around about 125 sensitive information types that are based on a whole bunch of pretty standard stuff that we're looking for from a number of different countries across the world. And there's been a lot of work, over the last few months to really improve the accuracy of the detection routines for those sensitive information types. If you're familiar with our sensitive information types, especially when it comes to Australia, you'll know that there's many instances where the Australian SITs do a lot of false positive behaviour. And that's mainly because they were all built in the India Development Centre by two blokes that were not familiar with the way Australian PII worked. They are now, and they've done a lot of work to really improve this, and you'll see this trickling into all of your tenants over the next couple of months. Good example of one of the problems we used to see all the time, and you may have come across it yourselves. The Australian tax file number, sensitive information type, will false positive on an Australian formatted mobile phone number. So I was out at a customer recently, and they wanted to do check for TFNs going out through Exchange Online, and they were getting almost 100% hit rate because just about everybody's signature's got their mobile phone number in it. So they fixed that, and it's one of the things that they fixed. They're also giving us the ability now to clone and edit the inbox sensitive information types through the UI and start altering things like the LUN checks and so on and so forth that we can associate with different sensitive information types if you need to play around with those yourself. When you're building a policy, you can also utilize one of the built-in policy templates. So if you know you need to conform with the Australian Privacy Act, you can actually just go and choose that, and it will automatically figure out what sits it needs to deal with. One of the other benefits we've released recently, and you can do this in Endpoint DLP as well, is one of the condition predicates available now is sensitivity label. So previously what we do is we'd just be looking at files for things like credit card numbers, Medicare numbers, what have you. But if you've got a customer, or you do yourself utilize sensitivity labeling as part of MIP, we can now look for instance, confidential files, highly confidential files as a condition in DLP, and then make a determination based on that, which is something that we've needed to do for ages.
Hey, Macca, just a quick one. Sure. Jacob's asking around the Switzerland CID. It's not currently visible in the DLP engine.
Yeah,
is there a plan for that to appear?
Yeah, I tried to configure the DLP policies to get information about the Switzerland confidential identity data, and wasn't available.
Okay.
That was I think 5 or 6 months ago.
Yep. So I am not sure on that one. We've got the social security number only. Is that the one, or is it a different one?
No. It's
Okay.
the client number on the bank in the Switzerland. All
right. This is what you're seeing on the screen here is a dog food tenant that has every built-in set that we currently have available. So if you could do me one massive favor in the chat, give me the name of the piece of, which you may have already done, the name of the piece of sensitive information you want. And if you can give me a link to something that explains the way in which that number is derived, I'll get that across to Ayush and Pratik in the India Development Center, and we'll get on to creating that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
I will paste it later on the chat.
Sorry?
I will paste this information later on the chat number.
Yeah,
on the chat window.
Thank you. And especially if you've got any information about the way the number is structured, that'll really help us. And if you're happy to do some testing for us, let me know. Just yes or no. I'm happy to test in the chat, and then I'll get back in touch with you after this. We'll contact the guys in India. We'll start the ball rolling on this so we can get it in, because fundamentally, if you need it, there's probably hundreds of other people in the EU that need it as well. And our previous generic EU detections were pretty damn poor. So the more of these you can give me that you need, the better this is going to make our product. So thanks for that. Okay, so one of the areas in which we've traditionally been very poor is in alerting and remediation. And we're actually doing a lot of work at the moment to improve that capability. Right now, the alerts are very poor. They don't tell you very much. There is API support to suck out all of the alerts and stick them into a SIM. That's been there for ages. But over the next couple of months, you'll see a very detailed alerting and remediation capability come in, along with evidence gathering. So you can expect to see, going into the March timeframe, a pretty comparable alerting and remediation capability to what you get in Symantec today. In terms of the end user experience, we try to make sure that we're keeping the user in their flow as much as possible. So you've probably seen a lot of this stuff in the past. For instance, policy tips within the FAT client and within the web client to help educate our users about when they're going to violate a policy. So if we've got a credit card number in our email, we can pop up a policy tip in Outlook to say, hey, there's a credit card number there. You might want to do something about that and stop them from sending it. When it comes to endpoint DLP, the way we really worked in with the end user experience was to utilize toast notifications. So in endpoint DLP, if you decide to, for instance, block copying to the clipboard, then what will happen is when you're inside the document with sensitive information inside it and you choose to copy something, when you go to paste it out somewhere else, we'll interrupt your flow with a toast notification. And that toast notification will say you're not allowed to do what you're not allowed to do. We'll hand that back to the Activity Explorer so that we can see potentially what the user did, and we might potentially alert that back on the back end as well and create an alert and an incident report. And we may also, depending on how we configure it, allow the user to override that setting. Say, yeah, I actually am allowed to go and copy this data out, and et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see that as we do the demo. Now, we talk about it being available across platforms. We're talking endpoint DLP here, right? So this slide, whilst it shows you an endpoint DLP action, remember that DLP as a condition inside Outlook web access, Microsoft Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, SharePoint, it's still embedded into those individual applications and those user environments as well. When it comes to enforcement, this is where we're quite basic in what we can do. We have the ability to do blocking, auditing, or blocking with override on certain capabilities inside the endpoint. What you're seeing on the screen now is a generic slide that talks about the types of stuff we can do across the different workloads. But when we're thinking about endpoint DLP specifically, I've got another slide which I'll show you in just a moment that will give you an idea of what can be done on the endpoint right now. So let's target the endpoint. Endpoint DLP is natively built into Windows 10 and Microsoft Edge with no agent required, so long as you have Windows 10 1809 or later. And that's it. Doesn't work on anything else. Doesn't work on previous versions of Windows 10 prior to 1809. Doesn't work on Windows 8. Doesn't work on Mac. Doesn't work on iOS. Doesn't work on Android.
What's the cumulative update requirement around that too, Macca?
As long as you were current with September 2020, you were fine.
Okay, cool.
So September 2020 and later, you have the Endpoint DLP agent in its stable state. Office, however, with your Office client, they shipped an update in September, which broke Endpoint DLP's capability to scan certain files. So you actually need Windows 10 to be at a minimum of the September update cycle, and you need to have an Office client on 2010 current or monthly enterprise. Semi-annual didn't get affected by the break. So if you're running monthly enterprise or current channel, you need to be on at least 2010, which by now you'll be past that. Okay, that's just something to be aware of, and it's documented. But yeah, we just broke it in current channel and enterprise monthly for a couple of months there. And thank you for reminding me on that one, Steve, because we ran into that at a customer, did we not?
Yes, we did. That's why I thought it was a good one to flag.
Thank you. The deployment, piss easy, right? If you've done MDATP, you're already deployed. You're already enrolled. You're done. You do need to do nothing else. So MDATP customers are already enrolled in Endpoint DLP and are ready to get the policy. If you're not, you just need to run through a very quick enrollment mechanism, which is identical to MDATP. And I'll show you how that's done in a moment. Look, this is just one of those slides that's supposed to convince you that you want to go with us. I guarantee you that you'll probably look at this, you'll probably pocket, you probably won't go near it for another 4 to 6 months. But nevertheless, when our salespeople are trying to sell this to people, they're really focusing on things like the friction, nothing to deploy, and that's going to be so much better than what you're dealing with all of the infrastructure you've needed to deploy for Symantec and McAfee recently. Difficult to manage. Our one apparently is not difficult to manage. And our effectiveness is, we believe, better than a lot of the others because we're not so much a sledgehammer. And realistically, when we talk about that sledgehammer, this is sort of what they talk about next. So when you're building a DLP policy for endpoint, your conditions are sensitivity label, presence of sensitive information types, and the ability to exclude paths. We will evaluate whether or not a file meets a DLP policy and whether we need to do anything about it on create or modify. All right, and that's it. Next month, file read will be an evaluation trigger, which is particularly important for us, and I'll explain why. Right now, if you deploy an endpoint DLP policy, from the moment you enroll the device into endpoint DLP, we will only check on file create or file modify, which means if you've got a treasure trove of data sitting on those local hard drives and you're not modifying it and just reading it, we will not check any information inside it. So think about this. I have got a hard drive with a file on it, and it's got 50 credit card numbers inside it. All right, and the file is there now. I then enroll the machine into Endpoint DLP. I then send that file off to a network share. I print it. I do something with it. We won't catch it because the file didn't get created or modified after it was put into Endpoint DLP. If you opened that file up, made a change and saved it, that would then trigger us to look at that file. Then we would see that there were credit card numbers in it, and next time we go and do something about it. If you're demoing this to someone, put the machine into Endpoint DLP, wait 15 minutes, then copy a whole bunch of files onto it with sensitive data inside it. That will trigger the file create evaluation, which means we'll know about it, which means we'll do what we need to do. That's piss poor, quite frankly. And that's why in February, we're going to be bringing in file reads so that we capture anything that's already there on the machine when we get enrolled. The little nuance that you need to know about now, because it catches every single person out when they try to test it. Supported file formats, Office files, PDF, standard text, RTF, CSV, TSV, and the top 20 source code variants on GitHub. That's it. Oh, but what about this? No. What about that? No. That's what you get. Are you going to expand it? Yes. When are you doing it? Over time. Okay. To be honest, that catches the majority of what people are asking us for at the moment. You can guarantee that you'll find yourself in some kind of tricky situation at some point. If you do find that and it's a file format you need, let us know and we'll try and get that pushed up the stack rank for you. And in terms of enforcement actions, what can we enforce? We can enforce audit only, block or block with override on copy to USB, copy to network share, printing of the file, copying to clipboard, uploading to unallowed cloud apps natively through Edge, Chrome via an extension that's currently in private preview. And we can also specify unallowed browsers where we just flat block, like Internet Explorer or Opera or whatever that might be. And also access by unallowed Win32 apps. So you can say, for instance, notepad.exe is an unallowed app. So if I try to open a file with sensitive information in it in Notepad, it'll just block me straight away. Now, the questions that come up are, okay, that copy to USB and copy to network share, can I do block to these USB manufacturers? No. Oh, you going to do that? Yes. When? Soon. Okay. Copy to network share. Can I block certain network shares and not others? No. Oh, you going to do that? Yeah. When? Soon. Okay. Printing. Can I block printing to personal printers but leave all the corporate printers all right? No. Oh, you going to do that? Yeah. When? Soon. Okay. So it looks great on the outset, and then when you start getting into it, it all starts falling apart. And then the customer says, what about Bluetooth? And I say, what about Bluetooth? And they say, can you block that? No. But I pulled a copy of your policy and it says Bluetooth in the JSON. Yeah, it's there. We just haven't turned it on yet. Fantastic. What about block and screen sharing? No. But I pulled the JSON and I saw the screen sharing settings inside it and they're all turned off. Yeah, it's in there, but we haven't turned it on yet. When are you doing that? Dunno, soon. So what's really annoying about this is when you start digging into it, firstly, it's pretty primitive in what it can do. When you think about it, it's a V1 of Endpoint DLP, but it is pretty primitive in what it can do. But the really frustrating thing is when you start digging into the JSON, you see all these capabilities in there which are simply not turned on yet because we haven't sent them through the rigorous testing we need to send them through yet. So anyway, enough bitching by me. Let's go and have a look at what it looks like. All right. So what you can see on the screen there is the bloody slides again. There we go. So what you can see on the screen is the compliance portal. Now, in the compliance portal, we're going to be looking at a couple of areas. Firstly, we're likely to find ourselves in the Activity Explorer at some point, as well as in the Alert Explorer. So the Activity Explorer, oh, beautiful. I've been connected to this VM all freaking day, and it hasn't told me that I had to sign in again once. There we go. So the Activity Explorer here will give us a bit of a rundown on the types of activities that have happened throughout the course of the filter period that you can see here. The filter period at the moment goes to a maximum of, looks like 60 days at the moment. And we're intending to bring that out to a year fairly soon. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of activities that we've caught. So files created, DLP rules match, files modified, blah, 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 blah. And we can sort of filter this by whatever we need to look at. And I'll come back to that soon. I don't really want to spend any time on that until after I've done the actual demo. But you can see there's a bunch of stuff that's happened over the course of the day. There's files being copied all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the data loss prevention area of the compliance portal is what we're interested in here. So the first thing that you'll want to be looking at is endpoint DLP settings. So this is the global settings that are going to apply to every machine enrolled in endpoint DLP. At the moment, these are global settings only. We can't carve them up in any way. Okay, that's something, again, that's on the roadmap, the ability to carve up sets of settings for different types of machines. First one you've got are your file path exclusions. These are fairly obvious. So you'll probably want to exclude certain paths from being monitored by the endpoint DLP agent, maybe the indexing folders and stuff like that, because they may not be relevant. However, there are a bunch of customers that say we're not going to put any exclusions in because, quite frankly, that gives us an out. And if someone knows that I'm not monitoring System 32, they'll dump all the shit in there that they want to exfiltrate, and they'll exfiltrate it from that point. Unallowed apps. This is where we define the Win32 apps that we want to specify as poo apps, so that if we attempt to have any interaction with those, we will either block with override, or audit based on the settings inside the policy for unallowed applications. So in here, you'll see that I've got notepad.exe and winzip64.exe. So if I'm attempting to add files to an archive with sensitive data in them, I'm blocking that at this particular point. Browser and domain restrictions. So the first one are our unallowed browsers. We only have intelligent blocking in one browser in GA at the moment, and that's Microsoft Edge. So from Microsoft Edge, what we can do is we can determine a black or whitelist capability for individual service domains, whole domains only, not partially thereof. And that's available for Edge. Right now, there is a Chrome extension in private preview to give service domain block capability to Chrome as well. And that should come out over the next 2 to 3 months in GA. And then after that, we're looking at probably going and doing something with Firefox next. So we do intend to hit quite a few of the browsers out there with proper endpoint DLP integration. At the moment, if you're not on an endpoint DLP enlightened web browser, then you can add it to the unallowed browsers, and that will just blanket block you the ability to interact with sensitive data based on the policy that you've created. Now, when we choose to add unallowed browsers, you'll see that we've got a bunch that are built in that we look for, and then if what you want isn't on that list, you just go and put in the browser name and the executable name that you're interested in, and we'll put that in as a browser. Notice Tor's not in there. Additional settings. So we have the ability to block, audit, or block with override. When you block with override, you can be asked to put in a business justification. So we can configure what that looks like here. And then finally, you'll notice this is a new thing that only came out recently. In fact, this one was only in there recently as well. This last one, always audit file activity for devices. You know how I was talking before about when you onboard a device, it starts handing out all of its auditing activity straight away, so that you can go and look at the Activity Explorer and then make a distinction as to whether or not you need to be doing anything or creating policies. Some customers have said, actually, we don't want you doing that. We do not want you to start sending audit activity straight up, because it's a problem with the German, what do they call, German Workers' Council, and we consider that a breach of privacy. So we now give you the ability to turn off that audit file activity. The problem here, of course, as I said, it's global, so there's no way for us to say, you know, for everyone that's got a machine in Australia, let's turn it on like this. For everyone that's got a machine elsewhere, turn it on like that. So it's global right now. There's not what we can do about it. The next thing you'll want to do is build yourself a policy. So I'll just quickly take you through what policy building looks like. So we've got here US financial data for devices. I'll edit this particular policy, bring that up. And yes, the compliance portal is bloody slow. And I apologise for that. So what we do when we're building a policy is we give it a name, choose the locations to apply it to. Now, in this case, what we do is we turn it on for devices, for users and groups. So by default, we'll look at all users and groups, or we can choose to put in exclusions. So what happens here is if I'm included in a policy as a user or a group, it will include any machine that I'm logged into that is enrolled in Endpoint DLP. So it's quite possible that if I've got transitory devices, sometimes they'll be reporting and sometimes they won't, because they'll be out of scope of a policy depending on who's logged into them at the time. So just be aware that it's done on a user and group basis. Once you've done that, you go and create your rules. So in this case, what we're doing is we're looking for our condition, which in this case is a sensitive information type. And in this case, we're looking for credit card numbers, US bank account numbers, and ABA routing numbers. We're looking for any of those being present in the file that we're scanning. Additionally, you can choose to scan for sensitivity labels. So you might say, I'm interested in finding anything with a sensitivity label of general and public, and I'll have that as a match as well. So that's something that came into effect recently. You can put in exceptions. So we might say, I want you to find everything except if the content contains a Swift code as well, in which case we'd ignore it. And then you've got your actions here. So this is the actions that we can restrict on Endpoint DLP. So for each of these capabilities, you want to turn them off or on, and then choose whether you want to block, audit only, or block with override. And that does what it says on the tin. So audit only won't stop anyone doing anything, but we'll write everything back to the Activity Explorer pipeline. Block will just stop you from doing what you want to do and not give you the ability to do it. Block with override will allow the end user to override it, potentially provide a justification. And if they do provide a justification, that will also be logged into the pipeline as well. Okay. And then, of course, the rest of it is standard for DLP. So are we doing notifications? Are we doing incident reporting, et cetera, et cetera? Right. Once you've built your policy, you then need to wait a good 15 minutes before it actually starts to work. And then that policy will be distributed to the devices that come under the purview of that policy. Now, because a device could potentially be under the purview of a policy or not, as a case may be, any device that is connected to the tenant and is enrolled in Endpoint DLP will get every single policy that's relevant to them, okay? Every single policy. So, and not even the ones that are relevant to them. They will download every Endpoint DLP policy to them. And the reason for that is because if a user logs onto them that is part of that policy, they need to know about it and enforce it straight away. So give it 15 minutes after you've done it, then you should be good to go. And indeed, I am on one of these machines now. So just to give you the sort of the standard demo. Going back to the policy, you'll notice that most of the stuff I had was block or block with overrides. So I've got myself a network share here, and I've also got myself a whole bunch of stuff with credit card numbers in my OneDrive. So copying from local to network is blocked. So when I attempt to do that, I get the toast notification to say, go away, you're not allowed to do it. This is a straight block, not a block with override. Okay, so I don't have a choice. I can't get away with doing that. If I go into the file in question here, right, you can see here I've got a bunch of credit cards, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this credit card. Now, I've got a block on copy to clipboard, so you'll notice that it still allowed me to copy to clipboard. In earlier builds of Endpoint DLP, it would block me with a toast at this point. A lot of customers said to us, we have many instances where it's perfectly legitimate for you to copy and paste within the same document. So we don't want you to block us at that first point. What I want you to do is I want you to block when they attempt to actually paste. So we made that change. So what you're currently looking at, if you think that's a demo failing, in actual fact, what you're seeing here is the change in behavior. So now, for instance, if I go and open up Word and try to do the paste action, this is where we should see the block occur. I've just hit Control V and it says, no, can't do it. Okay, so just be aware of that. I could paste back into that same document as much as I want because I haven't actually left the boundary of that document. But as soon as I've tried to go into Word, I'm not allowed. And of course, what I also get is the ability to review what was happening here as well. So you can see that it's actually done that block of copy to clipboard there. The justification stuff, I've got my print action as a block with override. So when I try to print, you see again, it blocks me. But this time, because I've got the ability to do an override on this, it's now giving me the option of a justification. And the justification has 3 defaults, or I can choose other and put in my own stuff. And in this case, I'll choose allow. All right, and that will then allow me to go ahead and print to PDF. like so. Okay, it's not gonna open up the previous action. It had already blocked that, and we were done. We killed that immediately. So you do need to go ahead and do it again. The next thing is in terms of what we can do inside Edge. So if I go into Edge, I've got DLP test here. Probably everyone's fairly familiar with that. What we're looking at here is the ability to upload to a cloud service. So here I have my credit card. I'm going to dump that into my file upload, try and hit submit. Oh, and it worked today. Sometimes it works. This is a little bit dodgy, so I'll try the Gmail instead. So here I'm going to send to dodgy bastard. Oh. And in this case, what I'm going to do is copy that across as an attachment, and it blocks me straight away because I'm not allowed to send, in this case, credit card data into mail.google.com. So that's basically it from the user experience side of the fence. And if we go back to the Activity Explorer, knowing that I've got 8 minutes left and I'm pretty much on time, what you'll see is, generally speaking, there's a 2 to 3 minute lag in the activity happening on the endpoint and us seeing it inside Activity Explorer. But what you should see now is some stuff that happened during the course of that demo. So, for instance, you can see that here we've got a file being printed, and we can drill into exactly what that looked like. So we can see that we've attempted to print a file from this client IP. We're in the warn enforcement mode here. We can see the target file path, the printer name, more information about the actual file itself, what DLP policy it triggered and what rule within that DLP policy it triggered, what was its location, etc., etc., etc. So you get a fairly decent amount of information coming back on that. And we'll get that for things, for all of the different activities that that we've caught. So in this case, we can drill down a little bit further if we need to. So we can see stuff like copy to cloud, copy to clipboard, printing, etc., etc. If you've set up alerting, then you'll see a bunch of alerts starting to come through, and they will either be emailed to you or just thrown up on here. So we can see, for instance, there was a policy match for Alice Stevens' sales team cards. Now, this is an example of the work that we're doing now to make the alerting a little bit better. So it's still a work in progress, but we're getting new information here about the actors involved in the event. We can manage the alert from here, change its status, active, investigating, dismissed, whatever. We've got a management log that shows us what the analysts have been doing with it. They haven't actually done anything with it at that point. We can send notifications to users from here. I'm not going to do anything with my mail, obviously. And for any given alert, we can query the individual events that happened, which is pretty much the same stuff as what you saw in Activity Explorer. We're just surfacing that here for the purpose of DLP alert triage investigators to look at. And then the sensitive information type stuff, we can actually give you an idea of what was found in the document and the confidence level. What you don't get here is, at the moment anyway, a Content Explorer style interface where we'll actually grab the document, dump it in here, and let you look at the source itself to see what it captured. And we'll probably see that come out in February, March. So that is pretty much a whistle-stop tour of where we're at with Endpoint DLP at the moment. So there's, still it's improved a bit. There's still a long way to go. It's certainly very much a version 1, but as we go through the pipe, there's a bunch of stuff that we'll be doing over the course of this year. So we'll be giving you the ability to do full blown scans of the data at rest on the hard drives and gather all of the data about what's there and hand that back. We'll be over the next 6 months, we'll be producing an agent for Mac OS. That'll be the first other OS off the rank, and then we'll start working on iOS and Android as well, and a bunch of other sort of fit and finish stuff that'll be coming down the pipe too. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of where we're at. So that's pretty much it with 5 minutes to spare. So if there's any questions, fire away.
I'll ask one. Are the events visible also in the Office 365 audit side of things?
Correct, they are. So you can push this out to Sentinel, to Splunk, wherever you might want to get it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
In fact, there's an entire blog article that we published on actually exporting Endpoint DLP to Sentinel. If you're interested in that particular side of it, I'll dig that out and put it into the chat if I can find it. And of course, I can't find it when I need it.
I believe there's the GitHub repo for that, isn't there, Macca?
It's John Nordstrom's post. You know the one?
Oh, I know the one.
He's just unwilling to help.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, we're both pretty badly burnt over the last time that got used.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you owed him money or something.
No.
Look, it's out there. I'll give you a link to the actual GitHub solution. It's out there, but it's fundamentally it's a GitHub solution, right? So it's the export into Sentinel is not currently an official part of the product, which means if you go ahead and do this, fantastic, it works. But if it doesn't, the support structure gets a little bit iffy. We're looking at taking the stuff that you see in the link there and making it official part of the product this year, and tidying it up and making it something that's fully supportable. But at the moment, the support around it is a little bit iffy.
It's fair enough.
Anything else? Silence is golden.
Silence is golden.
Ben, I got there 3 minutes ahead of time. Bet you thought I was just going to go totally over and.
He was hoping you were going totally over.
I was kind of, if you want to run the wheels a little bit more, I literally just got back up from a 2.5 hour drive.
Nice.
I'm very sunburnt. I've only just opened a beer. I'm very much on holidays, and my computer didn't even have Hyper-V when I started this call. So,
Oh, dude, I'm so sorry. I've got nothing else.
I believe the term, Ben, right now is you're unemployed.
I'm currently gainfully unemployed.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a nice place to be. Yeah, so I've got a machine that will potentially be prepared for when I am gainfully employed, but right now all it's got is Call of Duty on it. So it's not too bad. I went from having nothing at all to having a reference image and a virtual machine ready to be enrolled into the Intune training tenant in 10 minutes. NVMe disks are fantastic.
Gotta love it.
Gotta love it.
Over to you, buddy.
All right, cool.
I will drop off and make soup.
All right, have soup. Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to hear your
Thanks
voice.
a lot, Macca, for jumping on.
Cheers.
Nice.
Gotcha.
All right. Hey, everyone. Sorry if I'm a little bit scatterbrained. I, am here. So what are we doing? Universal print?
Yep.
That sounds like a thing. Has anyone, so I know the last couple of groups, I've sort of spoken about universal print and how exciting it is, and there seems to be a lot of interest in it. Since the last user group, has anyone outside of me and Steve and Mark, because I know Mark's played with it, has anyone played with it? Has anyone had any experience with it?
Yep, I have the experience with universal printing in the private preview. It was amazing. But was assigned to my old tenant, and I lost possibility to work with that.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, I need to check with whom I can assign the same licenses to my new tenant, but I don't know who I can spoke with that about that.
So long as you have was it M365 or Windows, Mark?
Yeah, Windows. Okay, basically what Steve's saying, without being very specific, because I don't have the docs in front of me, they've made it very easy in the last couple of months to actually. So they've opened it up. It's not in private preview anymore. It's in public preview. And basically, when they switched it over to public preview, the general gist was, as long as you're paying real human money for the license that you have in this block of SKUs, you can use this, which stung us pretty hard because we wanted to do it and we were playing with funny money licenses. But I think they've even extended that now. I have a feeling that you can have a trial license and still play around with this stuff. I think you don't get
certain trial licenses, just not internal usage.
And the key reason for that was because they wanted to be able to provide as much support as possible, which is completely fair. This is very much in preview. It's very rough around the edges. But okay, so for everyone else, thank you, Mark. Yes, so it's quite a huge range of licenses that will get you access to this. The important thing that everyone needs to know is that every user that will eventually use a universal print printer on their machine has to also have the universal print license attached to their account. So this isn't just an admin account that needs the license; it needs to be assigned to every single user, which isn't a problem because once you have that license, it's infinite amount of licenses. It's not a per user cost or anything like that. So just make sure to set it up in your dynamic licensing, which everyone should be doing, and that won't be a problem. Steve, how many machines have you got?
I have 1 million machines.
You have 1 million machines?
Right now I have my printer device, and then I'm building an Intune training device.
Okay, cool. I am as well. I got a feeling that mine might be faster.
Yes.
So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through the entire process of, so we've, Steve's just signed us up for the license. So we're going to go through what you need to do for the licensing, what you need to do for the user assignment, how to configure it on the back end, and then hopefully if everything works, we'll get it deployed out to a machine and just show how easy it is. We can also have a little conversation around what Universal Print isn't, because it's not the final solution for everyone. I think the simplest way to explain this is it is a very rough around the edges solution for zero trust networked computers to have access to on-prem printers. I keep bouncing around the idea of thinking this is the greatest thing in the world, and then also flipping to the other side of going, but if I'm not in the office, why do I want to print to the office?
Yep.
But
just to annoy people.
Or yeah, just to annoy people, just keep hitting print. But the important thing here is that if you're on a zero trust network and you have your device in the office, you're still not trusted by the network in theory. So this solves that solution. So it's not about me or you printing while you're at home to the office in France or whatever. It's about being able to get access to these resources without having to jump through ridiculous hoops. So that's kind of the solution. All right, sorry, I'm very unorganized and very, very sunburnt. Let's have a look here. Can I filter by group tag? Used to be able to. That was a cool place.
Lesky, we've got some background noise from you.
What I want to do, enrollment.
All right, so I've got my VMs up and running then. So.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So I'll do the licensing stuff on my side, and then we'll flip over to your machine and we'll install the connector and do all that sort of stuff on yours.
Cool.
I'll just share my screen.
As you can see, we're pretty organized on this, but it's also a pretty straightforward demo. So
it's super easy. I think the key takeaway here is that I'm on holidays and I can do this in less than like 5 or 10 minutes. So
you're not on holidays. You're unemployed.
Yeah. I want to see Steve's beautiful face. All right. Okay, I'm in my portal. Apologies if this is too small. I'll make it a little bigger. Let's have a look at this. I don't know whether I've got access to see it or not, but this is the admin center where we assign the license. Just want to make sure that we've got that. I should have visibility of it. I just can't add it myself because because I'm just the intern. I don't have access to set up licenses. So this is the universal print license. So you can see here by default in the public preview, you have 300,000 licenses available. This is basically saying it's infinite, right? You have the idea is that this is going to be bundled up in the cost of another license. Universal print is not potentially going to cost any extra. So this is just an arbitrary number just to basically say that every user that you want to have access to Universal Print needs to have this license assigned as well. So we're going to pop back over to here. So this is just in portal.azure.com. I'm going to go into Azure Active Directory, and I'm going to set up a couple of things here. All right, so let's set up 2 groups. I'm going to set up Universal Print admins. And I'm going to go members. I'm going to add myself and Steve. I'm also going to just create a standard Universal Print group, although in reality we should probably be setting this up just as your baseline group, because the point here is that if you're doing Universal Print, everyone should have the Universal Print license assigned to them. But for this demo, we'll just go in here, Ben, Steve. So admins, you go licenses. Save. Cool, that's done. Now, just leave that for a second. I'm going to Universal Print. There's a way. I need to add a. I think I need to add a role. It's been such a long time since I played with this. Directory roles. Heck. There we go. Okay, so we've got printer administrator and printer technician. These are how you manage the print mappings and the print queues and things like that. There is a difference between the two, but for this scenario, all we're going to have is printer administrators. Standard users don't need to be an administrator or a technician for obvious reasons, but you know, for adding new printers and adding new queues and stuff like that, you need to be a member of this role. So we're just going to add assignment. Also assign roles to groups. That's what I want to do. Whatever. I'm not going to do that. Just make sure that's working. Steve, are you yawning?
I am. I'm comfortable to admit that.
All right. Okay, cool. So we now have the permanent role of printer administrator. Obviously, this is bad. We should always be doing this through PIM and all that fun stuff. But for now, whatever. It's all good. Okay, so we've now got the license assigned to our account. Steve and I have the role of printer administrator. Therefore, we have the ability to add printers and do all that sort of fun stuff. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go into Universal Print. I've got it here, but you know, everyone's got access or experience with the portal. I don't need to explain that. So we're just going to go into printers, and I'm going to take a wild guess that I'm going to need to close this pane and bring it back up.
Yeah, you'll need to
I got it.
sign back in.
I just needed to refresh it.
Okay. Typically, you just need to get a new token.
Yeah, exactly. This should come up. Yeah, I'll just close it and bring it back up. There we go. I am a printer administrator. This is what happens when you suggest to do a session when you are swimming lots. Let's have a look. Groups. Got universal print. That role isn't assigned yet. Or it's saying it's eligible?
Did you put it through? No, entitlement. Weird. Do you want me to just do it on my screen?
Yeah, sure, if you've got it.
Yeah, so I'll just share my screen. Screen two. Cool.
I just needed to activate it.
Cool. All right, where am I going, Ben?
So you're going into download connector, actually, in the middle of the screen. So this is our steps. We're just going to download the connector. Is this on your which machine are you currently on?
The print server.
The print server, cool. So just to clarify, guys, when we talk about the print server, the point of this is that you don't actually need a full server for this. You just need a virtual machine or a machine that has direct line of sight to the printer that you're going to be mapping. And what this is basically is think of it similar to like an AAD Connect or a AAD Connect solution. So it's just a pass-through middleware solution that allows the printers to talk with Azure. It's quite simple. Doesn't actually take up that much resources, which is surprising.
So just curious if anyone knows, is it basically using the same, I guess, because if you take a look at the Azure AD app proxy, as well as what's the other thing that they basically had the same common heritage? Yeah, do you know if it's using the same underlying?
It's the same concept.
Yeah.
It's using a whole host of APIs from there's this big, huge conglomerate universal print group that is basically every printer company in the world who's agreed on a fundamental API standard for this, and then Microsoft's gone ahead and created this based on that concept. But yeah, using the same technology that they've used for all the other connectors.
Yeah.
Cool. So once we've got that open, obviously it's just saying we're going to collect diagnostic data. We want to log in with one of the accounts that has admin or GA access. So Steve will just use his account.
Cool.
So if we go back to the portal, give it a name. So this is just the connector name. Okay, sweet. So we've now added that connector, and what we can see here on the server that we're using is that we have one printer. So if you've got multiple queues or multiple printers, this is where you would see that. This has all changed since I've last looked at it, but fundamentally, it's actually not that complicated. So we're going to select that printer. We're going to hit register.
At a high level, all this is doing is capturing the drivers that are required,
pretty much,
and any features, and putting it into a process for the universal print engine to use if it's got dual duplexing capabilities or color or things like that.
Exactly. Cool. So that is done. We can see it's now over in the registered printers. So we should be able to just close the universal connector now. And if we go back to the thing here and just go to printers, so we can now see that we've got that printer added. So you can also see the share status. It's saying not shared. So as well as registering the printer, we now need to create a share, or it's like a queue, right? So we need to share this out, and we need to specify who has access to that. So obviously, if you've got a queue that everyone's going to have access to, there's the ability there to allow access to everyone in my org, or you can go by user. I believe in the future, this is going to get to a point where we can just do this by security group.
So I've just put it to everyone in our org.
Yeah, cool.
It's not a good thing to do because you'll actually see. Can I see who this has been shared to? Okay.
Yeah, it's just.
So I'm just going to quickly show you this
Yep.
and why it's important to flag this. Is now if I go add, what you'll actually see in here is not just people in your org, but you'll see people outside your organization.
Oh, so like all the guests and stuff.
Yep. So you can see all of our guests' accounts and associated accounts in there.
We'll just add yourself and me to the share access then.
Yeah. So it's more just to be understanding when you're creating it. You may need to just make sure it's limited to just people in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, all users may make sense. It's just important to remember.
Yeah. Cool. You can go into printed properties and you can actually see some of the data that we actually pull out, which is this stuff's real cool. I will never ever be a print admin, but being able to see all this stuff is pretty sweet. So we can see by default what we're able to set, and we can customize this as well. So copies per job, color, black and white, things like that. Print connectors is obviously just, you can see the name of it. There's not a lot of data around this, but that's fine. And then finally, we can go into jobs and we'll actually be able to see the queue, so the print queue, and see any jobs that are going through or any that are stalled and things like that. So this is kind of, this is it as far as configuring the backend. The final thing that we need to do is get this ready so that we can deploy it out to our client machines. Document conversion is a cool thing. So what we can do is switch it on. It wasn't available last time I looked at this, but I think you can change like formatting of the print jobs that come through.
Yeah.
So I think it's around the PCL and PS6. Print things.
I'd assume it's also going to handle the conversion of letter to A4 and associated.
Yeah, so you can see at the moment it's more around rendering.
It's rendering XPS to XPS to PDF. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so that is. Let me just look here. So the next thing we need to do, I'm actually quite curious to see on our machine whether we actually need to install the driver or not.
Yeah.
Universal. Okay, so John said
that's correct. This is part of the problem with certain SKUs are not supported for universal print today.
Yeah. And this goes back to what we were saying as well, because it's not GA yet, so that they want to make sure that they can support the people that are trialing this and give them the full attention that they deserve. And by default, if you're paying money, then you get the attention.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you need to encrypt your machine. Okay. Let's just go into the print queue, and I just want to see what happens.
Where is it? It's under devices.
Because I got a feeling, because you're using a shiny new version of Windows, it might have the driver already installed.
Otherwise, I'll get it from the interwebs. So there's the cloud printer there.
Sweet. So this is just the default experience that if you don't deploy the configuration, the end users will be able to search for a printer and add it themselves anywhere in the world, as long as they have that the access control list rights to that print share. Just give it a second. Now there is more. There's a more fancy way of getting the print queues automatically out onto the machine. I've written a blog about it. I don't really think that we need to sort of go into too much depth about that.
Just put the blog in the chat.
Yeah, I'll just paste a link to it. So basically, the guide that Microsoft has provided is very much a minimum viable product, and they're providing the driver, and they're providing a CSV list or a CSV file with the print queues and jobs that you want to automatically map to machines. It's not ideal, so I sort of made a solution that is a little more polished, but using the same framework. So if you had access to this and you wanted to deploy this out and you didn't trust that your end users would be able to find the print queue themselves, then you can actually go on there and you can configure it and deploy it. Pretty much all you need to know, all you need to configure this is the share ID, the share name, and whether you want it to be default. And we can find that information from the portal. So if you just go into overview on the screen that you're on, Steve.
I'm just grabbing the test page.
Oh, nice. It's already come through.
And there's the test page that you can't see because it's blurring out.
Yeah, nice. So that's come through. That's awesome. So, I mean, you can see how ridiculously easy that was to set up. If we go into the overview here, I just want to show you a couple of things. So for anyone that is interested in this and is eligible for the license to set this all up and they want to have a play around and they want to deploy it, nicely to end users, follow the link that I've just sent through. Make note of the things on here. So you need the share ID, which is over on the right. You need the share name, which is the first thing there that says name, and that's it. That's all you need. Everything else will automatically make this work. As far as the driver, that's awesome to see that we no longer need to actually install that. A couple of builds ago of Windows 10, you did need to install a specific universal print driver, but it now seems to work natively out of the box.
So this is 20H2.
20H2, yeah, sure. So that's
so's the other one, I think. Let me just double
sweet.
check that.
So that makes the deployment of this even easier.
Because that's what I was thinking about.
No, it's 2004.
When I was playing around with it, because I was thinking surely the universal print driver would be in-box regardless. So to me, it was a little bit weird that you had to download the Intune Win package for it.
So it's the Intune Win file. If you unpack it, and we've done some guides on how to unpack Intune Win files. What it's installing a driver, but it's also installing a thing called a universal printer provisioning service. So this printer provisioning service is actually the thing that sits there and looks at the CSV file. So it's all very it's very, very rough. But the way that it works is you have a CSV file on a very specific location on your user profile that has a list of printers that you potentially, your admin wants you to have access to. The provisioning service looks at that CSV file every single time there is a log on or log off event or a log on event or a start event. And it then goes, hey, do I have this printer mapped or not? And if I don't, then I'm going to authenticate on behalf of the user through Graph to access the universal print API. I'm going to look for that print share. If I have access to that print share, then I'm going to then map that using the WSD protocol on the machine, which is basically what we've done by going into the printers and just adding the thing. It's just, there is a protocol in the back end that allows us to do this automatically, and there is a solution there. So the guide that I've written will get you all of the way that you can deploy as many printers or print queues as you want. But I also see value in not really pushing this stuff out and just advising the end users that the print queues are there. Feel free to search for them.
Yep. The self-servicing of these sorts of things, applications, printers, and things like that, means that if users need them, they'll find them and go and install them, rather than IT going in and installing them and then 3 years' time going, well, they have it, so therefore they must need it.
Exactly.
And perpetuating the cycle. So self-servicing is super important.
Yeah. So I've just chucked a link to the actual code for the proactive remediation script to configure the printers. So feel free to have a look and review that and tell me if it's terrible. But I mean, there's really not that much else to it. There is a couple of caveats around this. So right now, the two audiences for Universal Print is us as far as device admins. Using this as a direct line of deploying a printer to an end user's machine. The other one is actual printer vendors. So what we're using it with is quite a simplified way. You know, we're just mapping a printer and we're printing things to it. But behind the scenes, there's actually a really good API for once you've created that print share, you can programmatically work with the printer and you can do all sorts of things. So what the printer vendors are using this with is a way to build their own tool set that they will deploy with new printers. So you buy a machine or you buy a new printer and it's going to, you know, be advertised as natively working with Universal Print, and it's going to allow you to do things like swipe to print and, you know, that sort of authenticate the level of printing in a zero trust environment more than what we're doing, which is, you know, just a very basic, just print the thing. So right now, if you set this up, and you've got a swipe to print solution set up, it's not going to work. There's one key reason for that. When Steve sits on his test machine and he hits print or test print in that scenario, the job goes to Azure. It finds the share and finds the way back to the Universal Print connector, which goes back to that print server. At that point, it strips away the who actually requested or sent the print job and replaces it with system, because it hits the print connector and then the print connector goes, I'll send this to the printer on your behalf. So it's a problem, but it's going to be a problem that will be resolved eventually. So that is why things like access constraint printing and, you know, sort of swipe to print and all that sort of stuff don't currently work, because the print job does not retain who sent the printer or the print job all the way through the queue.
It does now.
It does now? Has that changed?
Yeah, so
have a look. Actually, can you see on the, does that job history stay there on the?
So on the print job itself, it states that it was sent by myself, but that's
Okay.
because it was rendered by myself.
Okay.
So if we go back here to the printer, go to jobs, and I can see who created
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder how can you on the server can you see old jobs in the print queue?
No.
No, because it's not an actual. It's just a.
You'd have to look at the event log, but could you pause the print queue on that print server machine and then send another job through and just see it should then sit in the queue?
Yeah, potentially.
On your print server machine.
Yep. Let me find my printers. As you can see, I don't use printers all that often.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's funny because I personally just don't care about printers. I just don't. It's so far beyond anything that I've ever had to work with. But the back end behind this stuff, I love the concept. And if this is now a case where they fix that user,
I cannot pause the printer.
You can pause the. You need to pause the print
Open
spooling
as administrator.
service.
Let's do it there. Pause. Now I can.
Sweet. Okay, let's see what happens.
We'll go back over here to this computer.
I'm going to be really impressed if they fix this, because so to be fair, this was like a month and a half ago that I looked at this last.
That's interesting. So it tells me that it needs my attention.
There we go. No, it's still doing it.
Yeah, but
So so on the client's machine, it's being sent as Stephen, but once it gets through the connector, it strips away the user, because the connector is running a system on the machine. This is how it gets through, right? So it is still stripping that away and sending it as system. But interestingly, it is still holding your information.
Yes. So the thing to note there is, because the print queue or the service is running a system, it doesn't have permission to sudo as a different user. The reason why it doesn't have the permission to sudo as a different user is because it can't authenticate as that user.
Yeah. The point is that we're doing the authentication layer on the client machine.
Yeah.
So you inherently have access. We've already done that authentication. So we're sending the job through the ether, through the cloud. It gets to it gets to this point, and then it's just going, I'll handle it from here. So the reason that your test print actually came through with your name is that because when you hit test print, it rendered on your machine. That's why. So this is still a thing that everyone needs to be aware of, and it is going to be a thing that causes problems if you are utilizing things like swipe to print or that sort of authenticated print mechanism, because it just won't end up in the correct queue. But also, I only spent a day trying to get this working on a in an environment that had that. So if anyone has access to that and has a spare day and a half to play around with this, I'd really like to get their feedback on.
There's no way you'd be able to make it work as it stands today.
Yeah,
And
it's
the
a known
reason
thing. There
why-
is actually. Let me find that there's a universal print feedback site that has like
User voice.
yeah, user voice, universal print. Find this. It's really, really good. There's a lot of interesting requests. I'm trying to find this. That ain't it.
So is there any other questions, or are we happy to say, well, we've gone through it all and yeah.
Oh, I found it. Did I find it?
Sounds like everybody's pretty comfortable with
So-
what we've talked through. Okay, no.
Just had a quick question, just on the server side, the print
Yes.
queue in Azure. Can you pause that there?
Yeah, you should be able to. So if there's a print job that is stuck, you can cancel it. But that's kind of.
But if you, I mean, if you know a machine's going to have some maintenance or something, and you just want to pause the queue just to stop.
You can remove
Jobs.
access to the. You can remove access to the share. Is what I would suggest. So not from the connector, but if you just go back to Universal Print, Steve.
Yeah, but as soon as you remove access, does it remove the print queue?
No. It doesn't remove the print queue from the machine. It'll probably just bomb out. But what you can do is you can create another share. So like if you just wanted to move the job queue over, you can have the same name share
And just swap it.
and then just swap it over. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can even see that. Look, you can swap printer. So if you've got so the share itself is independent of whatever the printer is. So what I would suggest at that point is what you would do is you would simply swap it to a printer that is on a different server. It's, again, using the concept of the server very loosely here, but you can just simply just fail over to another printer while you do the work on that particular
But
machine.
from a maintenance point of view, if the print server is offline, the client computer should hold on to it until it's been handed off to Azure, and then Azure will hold on to it until it's handed off to the print server.
That's correct. Yeah. It will sit there and sit there. Small. But yeah, like there is definitely a bunch of use cases that I haven't had to validate. So anyone that's more in the print space should definitely try and get access to this and have a play around, because there is room for this to grow and to mature.
Yep.
But I feel like the reality of this solution is it's going to be less of us looking after this and utilizing this, and it's going to be more the vendors that actually get the more value out of this.
Yep.
I think that's just going to be the reality of it. This is just going to be baked into the printers that we buy moving forward, and that we don't actually have to do a lot with it. It's more just going to be their they'll have their own veneer, but it will be this API that they use.
You just wanted to get that in there, didn't you, Mark?
Actually, no, that was, I was going to call it Keanu's metrics. But just one of the things to watch out for when you are working with Universal Print, and this is something I kept running into, is you've got to be in the Azure portal. You can't be in the Azure AD subset of the Azure portal.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, Universal Print won't show up, which is kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
It is.
It appears to be an oversight, is how I would position it. If I had to be nice about it.
Yes.
And the other interesting thing would be if you guys do end up playing with it, is setting yourself up as an administrator and setting someone else up not as an admin but having a license. Just going into the Universal Print pane and just seeing the difference between what you can see. There is not a lot. I mean, as in like you can't see that much as a user, but the functionality is exactly the same as far as printing. The admin literally just means that you can go in and you can play around with the printers and the shares. The technician only has access to the shares. The admin has access to add printers and add shares. Is primarily the difference between the two.
Cool.
Yeah, but I'd say, yeah, I'd follow what Ben's advice, that if you haven't had a chance to play with it, just jump in and it will take you, like, including you testing a few scenarios and users. It's there's less than an hour's work in just, you know, obviously if you're going to plan it out properly, there's more, but it was surprisingly easy.
Yeah, we set up an Intune training in literally, what, 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Or however long we've been on the call for.
Yeah, exactly. But also, the key thing here is that if you go back to the, how much work is involved in architecting out print servers and routes and all that sort of ridiculousness, this basically just means as long as you have a machine that can see that printer, install the connector, and then the only work that you actually need to do is around access control lists. Who has access to this printer? Who doesn't? There is no further work that really needs to be done. Deploying those print shares out to machines, sure, you can do that. Realistically, you don't need to. And the benefit of not doing it is that you can settle this up in the back end and not deploy it. Just get it ready. And if someone's smart enough to go into printers and search for it, good on them. It's self-service at its finest. So there is no harm. There's no cost at the moment to set this up. If you can get the license, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't at least try it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to find this user voice because there were a lot of really good questions. I will find it and I will put a link. Let's have a look here. Universal print feature requests. That's what I want. aka.ms. Go away. Give me the link. aka.ms/UP ideas. Put a link to this. So the top idea is secure and follow me printing, which is obvious, right? But they can't solve that until they solve the user stripping issue. And if we've got user stripping in an organization, then we've got problems. That was a joke for everyone.
Well, HR has problems, not IT.
Yeah, I'm happy with HR having problems.
But that user thing is going to be a bit difficult, isn't it? Because that print connector device software can run on a machine that has no idea about who the users are. It can be a standalone Win10 machine, not joined to any domain or Azure AD.
I don't think it is a problem. So all that needs to be done is, as the request needs to simply send through the SID of the user that does it through.
No, but you're assuming that the SID marries up with an account that's on the device.
That machine won't have any idea of that SID.
It doesn't. No. It doesn't matter. So there is a way right now on any Windows 10 machine, if you've got it enrolled into Intune and all that sort of stuff, so if you go into the users and all the groups and stuff, you can marry up the Azure AD user object to a SID.
Yes.
Right.
But right now,
the
object that is sending the print job is the owner of the print job.
Yeah.
So because the system account, or because the service is running a system, it is the owner of the print job. So if I was to go down
to impersonation.
And you can't impersonate random external customer or vendor accounts, as an example. So if I go here, so you'll see right now, it's running as NT authenticated system. If I go and change this to what is it, Ben, I think it is. Oh, this might have a little bit of a hissy fit because I don't have a password on this account. There you go. Now I've
Okay,
heard it.
so stop and
There you go.
restart the service. Let's see what happens.
Restart the service.
Absolute gold.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. We've got a workaround. Whenever a print job comes through, simply go in programmatically and change what the service is running as to that user. Stop the service, start it again, and let the print queue go through. There's no way that could go wrong.
Yeah. I can't see that being an issue ever.
Yeah. The other important one, just looking through the feature requests, the second most rated one is provide support for Mac OS devices. So if you've got Macs in your environment, like one of my clients who really wanted to use this, it's not available right now. But that's primarily just around the driver sets. It's just not supported at the moment, but I'm sure it will. And it will have to if they want this to become, more fleshed out.
Yeah. But the simple fact of the matter is, this is vastly better than the previous iteration of cloud printing from Microsoft.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me restart. Oh, wrong one. So, there. Started.
It's interesting. One of the feature requests is please add support for WVD. Why? I'm failing to understand why there wouldn't be support for it.
Because of the Kerberos auth.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
whoops.
Yep.
So
Fun on the sun.
test page. Yeah, I know it's got low turn loading. Oh wow, it's still actually sent to the system.
That's funny. So it's got to be a low level thing with the actual service, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so I
mean
mean
that's to restart the server or something like that.
Potentially, yeah. So it is right now. That's one of the biggest issues with the solution. But as I've said before, and I'll continue to say with these tools, this is a minimum viable product to show conceptually how this will work. All we can hope, crossing fingers, is that by the time they hit GA with this, they've solved that. Because once they solve the user pass-through mechanism, they'll be able to do all of the follow me and secure print solutions. So
yeah,
sweet. But yeah, so everyone just have a look at the blog that I put up. Check out the print feature request thing in the tech community. It's really good. There's a lot of good questions, and just follow that stuff. I think there's some. I definitely think there's some value in this, and as I said, I hate printers, so the fact that I'm excited about it says a lot.
Yep. Definitely. Awesome. So any other questions, or are we happy to wrap it up? Let's take that as a no.
They're all just in awe about how easy it was to set up.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how well organized we were.
Hey, I was super organized. I went out and made sure I got a really bad tan.
Yeah, you did.
I'm just looking at the photo from your GitHub profile. What happened to that guy? I haven't seen him in ages.
The white power shaved version of Ben.
Yeah. So you're like Steve now. There's multiple versions of you.
Yeah, there is. I need to update my photo. My hair's slightly changed in 12 months. Yeah. Actually, two years was.
Yeah,
that's how old that photo is.
Awesome. Well, awkward silence normally means that everybody's happy and comfortable, and we can start looking to wrap up the call.
Yes, I can see a cat behind you there, Mark.
Yeah, it wanted to get on the call. I was curious to see if the camera would show it, but it's too focused. It keeps trying to pull me back in.
Nice. All right, I reckon we can kill the recording.
Yeah, we'll do. Dun, dun, dun.